wonderful things of the future with blockchain, the undergirding technology beneath Bitcoin and Ethereum and all those cryptocurrencies, and using it to transform the business of video games, but more importantly, not just video games, really all content and what can be done with it. Just video games and this and so many other areas tends to be a spear point that opens up so much else. And in particular, we're going to talk about the way it can decentralize and take away some of the centralized control of content and publishing and allow for independent creators of many kinds, but starting with the video game business, what they can do. We are going to start with a world premiere, not quite as big as, say, Aquaman, but we would appreciate all your likes on the Twitter feed that they're, I'm sure, going to come up with in a few minutes. A 3-minute video introducing Wax, which is William Quigley's little interesting company. So, Ms. A.V. McQueen, if you would take it away.
Hi, I'm Brian, Director of Awesome at Wax. What is Wax? Wax is the platform where people can sell virtual items for free, like skins, crypto collectibles, and other unique virtual items, anywhere in the world. That's right, planet Earth. You live there. Me too. We should hang out sometime. There are over $50 billion floating around in tradable, in-game virtual assets, which means quite a few of you have them. Wax Express Trade is the safest and easiest way to trade them all, entirely for free! That's right. Like you gamers out there with collectible items. Want to trade some sweet skins for some other sweet skins? Or cash? Go trade your skins on Wax Express Trade, then cash out on app skins, without restriction. Completely player-to-player, peer-to-peer, mano y womano. Rip Ninja, GG.
Cool skin. Want to trade?
I know, and I do. There's more to Wax than just Express Trade. Wax is a brand new idea about virtual item trading, with the radical concept that you, the customer, should own your virtual items. Use them the way you want them. Pistols suck. Let game developers build games for your virtual items, not the other way around. Wax believes your virtual items are truly yours, to trade as you wish. Because Wax Express Trade is run by smart people. Smart people don't make stupid decisions. Check out our CEO.
Oh, hey, now's not a really good time, guys. Can you come back later? Winner, winner, chicken dinner, motherfucker.
That guy is awesome. And unlike other virtual marketplaces, items traded on Wax Express Trade are completely owned by the user. That's you, 100% forever. Come on, guys, we can do better than this. That's better. But if you think Wax Express Trade is just for gaming, then you're dead wrong. Any item that can be transferred, stored, or sold digitally can do so on Wax Express Trade.
Any item.
If it's got value and it's digital, it can be traded on Wax Express Trade. Boom.
Oh, shit.
Enjoy that chicken. Done trading your virtual items? Need some extra cash? Go sell them on opskins.com. You can cash out with PayPal, G2A, Skrill, even Bitcoin, and many other trusted payment methods. Here we go again.
That was an explosive premiere, obviously. So anyway, I'm going to let each of our fine panel members introduce themselves, talk briefly about their company, and then we're going to do some bigger issues about what this can mean to people who are trying to create games. And I think that this is important if you're an indie filmmaker, if you are a content creator, say an online influencer, thinking about how you're creating merchandise and digital stuff, and we see what's happening in places like Twitch with digital currencies and stuff like that. You can imagine a lot of opportunities here where you have an ability to control your assets, manage new economic and business models, and the rest. So we'll start with the star of the world premiere you just saw, William Quigley, CEO of Wax. He will wax forth on his company. Go for it.
Hello, everybody. So yes, I am the CEO and co-founder of Wax, and I've been in the crypto space for a number of years. And I guess I would say for this audience that cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies to date have not taken off. There's not broad adoption of them. And maybe we can get into this later in the panel, but one of the reasons for that is that we haven't had a really great use case. We have an interesting technology, we can talk about what it does, but in the end, consumers really only care about doing things they want to do and doing them better, doing them cheaper, right? That's the final sort of evaluation the consumer will give you. I believe, and I think it's founded with a lot of study that virtual items in games, and here at Comic-Con there's a lot of those, is one of the
And
best.
not so virtual items you'd like to share. There's a lot of very non-digital stuff.
Yeah, and non-digital. And there's an application for the blockchain with that as well. But virtual item trading is already a very big phenomenon. Hundreds of millions of people do it across the world. In-game virtual items trading back and forth, that's what Wax does. The only difference that Wax has versus all the other platforms that you can exchange virtual items is Wax allows you to keep those items in a blockchain so that no one can ever take them easily from you. And so from a gamer's perspective, if you have thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in virtual items, you'd like a safer place to have them. So that's the main value proposition, at least initially with Wax. And again, as we go into this panel, we can talk about what the ultimate on-ramp is and how do we get blockchain and cryptocurrencies more mainstreamed in consumer technology.
All right, Tony.
Hi, I'm Tony Shen. I'm the product lead at a project called DECENTRALAND, which is an open world that's owned by its users. So if you think about it, we've never really owned anything online. We feel like we have. Like when I share a post on Instagram, I feel like it's my post that's going into my profile, but there's a long history of companies shutting down or banning users, a lot of this in online games.
It's important to note that every end user agreement you ever signs that you don't own anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. So you think you bought that game, you bought the rights to play that game, but you own nothing. Right?
Yes, yeah. There rows in a database that you have no property rights over. So what's behind Decentraland is that we have a strong thesis that we're going to want to spend time in online worlds. We already do. Through social media and games and stuff like that, but like VR worlds like Ready Player One and kind of the sci-fi things that we dreamed about that should happen. And it makes more sense for the users to own the land in that world, have property rights, really own the things in that world, rather than have some like 4 companies own all of it and have control over everything that you create or own on these platforms.
All right. Go for it.
Hey everybody, I'm Jacobson. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company you're going to be hearing a lot of very soon called Robot Cash. Robot Cash is the world's very first video game, full-on distribution video game platform, something you might have ever seen, that allows you to actually resell your digital game when you're done playing if you want to. So you can go have thousands of games, AAA games from all the top publishers you guys love and know, tons of indies. When you go on, you can sign up to get an account. You can actually, play all the games you want. You download them if you want to sell them. You can sell them to your friends. You can sell them on the bazaar. You can actually get cash or get cryptocurrency back at a premium. And you can use them to buy new games. And when you go to sleep, your 15-year-old is going to turn on your computer and hit the button to start mining. And he's going to mine our token currency every night. And in a month, they're going to get, 10, 15 bucks and apply it to new video games. And so it's a big deal. We launch later this year, and we're pretty excited.
So, you mentioned digital goods. Can you give me a sense of the size of that business? You said hundreds of millions of gamers out there trying to trade stuff, usually within some publisher's kind of controlled space now. 15 years ago, one of the investors in Lee's company, Brock Pierce, an old friend of both of ours, he was doing gold farming in China, right? So they were pulling high value bits and pieces. They were paying kids to play games, which was really, I'm sure, a tough employment challenge for them, to play games, and they would take all the assets and they would resell them. And that was before companies realized they were leaving a lot of money on the table. But you want to go and change that dynamic by giving the person who's found that more ownership. I mean, how do the game companies let go of that? We want to decentralize this stuff and give the user control, but what's in it for them?
Yeah, so the industry is very big. I used to be in the motion picture business, and that's just an irrelevant business, right? It's tiny globally, maybe $15, $20 billion.
It's 11 billion in the U.S., 40 billion worldwide.
Yeah, and that's what actually goes to the theatrical creators is a much smaller piece of
That's very small.
So, video game is about a $140 billion industry, which is meaningful. About 100 billion of the 140 billion is made by people selling virtual items to the consumers. So consumers globally, there's about, call it 500 million people globally, buy these virtual items within a game. They spend 100 billion a year on it. And the issue, of course, or one issue is they don't own them. So you're spending $100 billion on property every year, but you don't own it. And our theory is that you should own it. And if you are going to own it, what's the best way to own it? It's in a digital token that's represented on the blockchain. And all we need to talk about, I think, from a definitional standpoint on this panel is just, let's assume that the blockchain is a place where things are very, very safe. So if your stuff is stored in the blockchain, it's a lot harder for somebody else to get it. So if you're going to give $100 billion of digital assets to all these video game players, where would be the best place for that stuff to reside? And it's probably a blockchain. So that's why I believe blockchain-based technologies have a pretty interesting role to play in the video gaming industry.
So I see that's a good opportunity. Now, you and Lee have done a lot of work together. You guys are shared investors, shared that kind of stuff. But your all space, Lee, it's interesting because you really see it as moving not just for games, that's the first place to go, but it's not the only place to go. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, digital products are digital products, right? I mean, a good is a good.
Bits are bits, right?
You know, bits are bits, right? So, you know, as we started this journey about 10 months ago, one of the things that kept popping up with some of our partners, I know some of the people at Warner Brothers brought this up, which, you know, if you can do a video game, it's just a digital good, couldn't you also do a movie? Well, the logical answer is, you know, yes. So I think what you're going to see over time is, you know, 5 years from now, maybe 7 years from now, I honestly do believe that, you know, buying digital products, whether it's going to, you know, Voodoo or, you know, PC distribution or even console distribution, when Microsoft and Sony sort of understand that it's going to be a screaming fight if they don't give, you know, their fans what they want, I think it'll be as common to resell your digital anything as it is, you know, buying it and going down to GameStop and trading it in. Right, I think so that's Pandora's box is out.
You're kind of creating, I mean, if you're from LA, you know Amoeba Software, you know, Bay Area, Amoeba Records, which has records and DVDs and a bunch of other stuff, and you go in there and you get rid of all the stuff we don't have. You're basically turning everybody into their own Amoeba, which would be a lot of microorganisms, I guess. But the point is that you're really, again, decentralizing that, but giving you back control of this thing that we're losing in the digital era. And that's the key. And you guys interact. Tony, for what you do, you're like, what, a successor to Second Life and those kinds of things? Is that really what we're talking about?
You could use Decentraland to build experiences like Second Life, but we're more like the web than any opinionated app. So we're live already. Users have spent millions and millions of dollars buying this digital land, and we have a developer kit that users can use to build their own experiences whether it's a Zen Garden or a shooter game.
So they're all separate, so you're closer really to something like what Epic does with some of its software, like a level.
So the two things I would combine are, one, we have the open development platform of, say, the web. So just like you can publish a web page to the internet and it shows up somewhere, we want to do the same thing. So no restrictions, anybody can publish stuff to the land that they own. And then the second thing is, because of what blockchain gives us around digital goods, users own it, they can be scarce, they're unique from one another. We can put those together into a continuous world. So you have the continuous world aspect of something like a Second Life, but the openness of the internet.
So this is interesting because back in the day, there were people who built actual businesses in Second Life.
Right.
But they were using, I think, some virtual currency that they had within the world, and there was some exchange rate, I think, but it was a very interesting. It was
And you had a token there, right? It was called Linden dollars.
Yeah, Linden dollars, and so that was one of our first dips into virtual currency, really, that wasn't a fiat currency. So you will have a blockchain undergirding that thing, and it can jump from, I'm going to give you Zen bucks over here, but that's worth whichever crypto blockchain currency is under there, worth whatever it is over here, and your very different experience over here, this first-person shooter. You can walk between those within your platform. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, in the industry it's referred to as interoperability. So with the games that you play today, with the platforms you use, they don't really talk to one another. You can't use an item you have here somewhere else. You can't port your identity from here to somewhere else, with some exceptions, but those are...
They're largely self-contained, though.
Yeah, exactly. They're like walled gardens. And when you build things in an open way, you unlock all of these new ways to build experiences and experience stuff online. So you can, like some of the things you were explaining, you can imagine taking your sword from one place to another place. You're not locked into one currency.
You never know when you need a sword in the Zen Garden, for instance. You got to cut
helps
back
you meditate.
the undergrowth or whatever. I mean, you got to start hacking away.
Yeah.
So who do you think is Tony? Who's your user? How far are you away from being decentralized land in existence, and who's your user?
Yeah, so we did an initial auction of the land last year and auctioned off somewhere around $20 million worth of land. And
This is really an equivalent of like an ICO, an initial coin offering, but it's virtual land, right, or virtual property.
you could think of it that way.
You kind of tokenized your
Right.
digital space.
So now everybody who has won an auction for the land, they own their land. We have no control over their land anymore. And we developed an SDK that's open source that now they can use to stand up these experiences. So we have hobbyists building like Zen gardens or like little animated dudes that are just for fun. And then we also have like major game companies building games on top of DECENTRALAND in the districts that they own on the platform.
So what kind of major game companies are playing in that space?
So recently we partnered with Barunson, who were the original publishers of MapleStory, which was a really popular game back in the day. And we don't have anything to announce, but we're working with major game companies in Asia and the US.
So you're not going to tell us here, even though we've already had a world premiere. You're not going to give us.
I don't think I'm allowed to say anything right now.
Oh, come on! This is Comic-Con. Give me a break. All right, so we've got the opportunity here to resell your stuff. How does this change the business for an independent filmmaker, independent gamer? What does it mean for them compared to a big publisher? Where does that go? What does that mean for them?
Well, I think the whole general idea that sort of we formulated the company on is you really don't need 30% to distribute content anymore, especially if you're using distributed decentralized file systems like Filecoin or IPFS, or basically you don't have to use Amazon for everything anymore.
So just to be clear, the 30% you're talking about the stake that gets taken by somebody like iTunes?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody takes it. Most people take 30%. You sometimes play it around, but generally speaking, they take 30%. But I think one of the things that we really felt strongly about when we started the company is, we have a 5% margin, and we publicly said it on, 300 different articles around the world. And, we think, that the power and the creative, rewards should go back to the creators. We really believe that, and we, whether it's a AAA publisher, all the way down to an indie creator, it should be they're the ones putting up the blood, sweat, and the tears, and a lot of times, like I've been in the video game business for 28 years and worked for major publicly traded companies my whole life, and I will tell you that publishers, you know, and indie guys put up a lot of money, and people don't realize how much money they put up for content. And sometimes these distribution portals take more money. They end up making a lot more money than the guys that created the content, by far. And so we really feel strongly giving 95% back on a new sale. And if you resell your game at the same price, you get 25% back on a used
person who
sale.
bought it.
The person who bought it, yeah.
And then the rest of them, I think this is really crucial, that we have, there's one down the street from me in North Hollywood, for God's sakes, called Game Junkie, and they buy back lots of games, and nobody gets that. GameStop buys back lots of games and resells them for some margin.
Publishers hate that.
And publishers hate this. This is the worst thing in the world. But
It's
studios,
not, it's not. It's the best thing in the world for them. They just don't, they're confused by
tell them why it's the best thing in the world.
Well, let me ask you this. How many of you would buy a house if you were never allowed to sell your house? How many of you would buy a car if you were never allowed to resell your car? We would all probably do it, but man, we wouldn't buy as many, and we would be way more cautious. Way more cautious. That's called the secondary market. When you're allowed to take something that you buy from somebody and then resell it down the road, that's almost an inalienable right most of us think about when it comes to physical goods.
This was not in the Constitution, just to clarify. But he is a lawyer, so he knows his stuff.
It is the wax Constitution.
Yes.
In the digital world, it sucks. In the digital world, once I sell you something, as David said, it's yours to borrow. Don't you dare think you own it. It's mine, I keep it, I can take it back anytime I want. Well, that's always offended me. And I used to run licensing over at a very big studio. So, but it still offended me that you could just extract that back. And the reason in the digital world they do that, but they don't do it in the physical world, is because they can. You can't do it in the physical world. I can't go and take your purse or your shoes or your bicycle and run and grab it and bring it back to my warehouse. In the physical world, it's very hard for the guy who sold it to you to say, don't you dare resell it, and then take it back.
But the gaming companies have tried to do that as much as they can with
They have, but it's
DLC.
very hard. In the digital world, it's easy because all that stuff resides online on their servers. So they can just say, ban that guy's account. Now I own what you have. So the, quote, revolution with blockchain is that we're going to create a tool or a weapon that prevents people from being able to do that going forward. When you own a digital item, no one can take it back. That is a change in the business model. But here's the crazy thing about it. So many industries over the years, my old industry, the movie industry, said if there are any people who go and make DVDs, copies of movies, our whole business is going to collapse. Of course, it turned out the best profit driver for 20 years of movie studios was those DVDs. So they were just wrong. And I think video game companies and other people who own digital assets will eventually realize that, wow, when somebody buys something and if they don't want it in a digital format, they can immediately resell it. They may come back and buy something they do want. And it may be the case that you being able to resell the item you bought from them doesn't lower their revenue because they just sell more shit you want to buy. It's always astounded me why businesses don't seem to get that. They don't get the fact that the secondary markets actually facilitate a lot more demand in the primary market.
This is a really good point, because what you're really saying is you are reducing risk, which increases liquidity.
Yes.
And it is exactly why companies do things like, online companies do things like easy returns. Like, if you don't like it, we don't want to know why, just send it back, whatever, it doesn't fit.
And because it's common sense.
Yeah.
What if I buy this and I don't like it? Well, you can just resell it. Oh, okay. Well, what's the resale value? Let me check online. All right, I only lose a few bucks.
Yeah.
And the big problem is just that that is what we call a business model change. And the thing about industry, the thing about capitalism is that businesses can withstand changes in competition. Businesses can withstand changes in regulation. They can changes in technology. They can withstand that. But virtually no business can withstand a change in the business model. I don't know why, but when a business model changes, most of the industries crumble. And I believe that's probably one reason they're worried, even though
Well, yeah,
it's
crumbling
actually
is a big
positive.
thing. I'm just saying, I mean, if I'm a business and it's going to crumble because I got to change my business model, I could be
It's
a
the
little
worry.
uncomfortable.
It's the worry. It's a
Yeah.
change in business model, but in this case, I believe it actually is going to benefit them.
Okay, so real quickly, I'm interested, Lee and Tony, as you all try to get people to think about these transforming business models, I do think this is, I mean, I worked for a studio also, and I actually was one of the representatives of the NBA trying to stop piracy, and I also secretly thought, you know, you're right, some of this is actually the world's best trailer. You know, a crappy copy of your movie is a really good trailer for a good copy of your movie. Right. And that actually, I think, probably was true. It certainly built audiences overseas for the legal stuff. But when we talk about changing mindsets at the big boys, we're trying to decentralize and get away from the big boys, but the big boys aren't going away. So how much progress is being made in transforming those mindsets in terms of new business model opportunities?
Well, yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, William's right. I mean, I like William came from licensing from Midway Games, Atari Games, you know, Virgin, a lot of these companies that spent a lot of money, and we made a lot of money in licensing. So he's absolutely right that whether it's big publishers or small indies, you know, change is definitely hard. It's hard because it forces you to think in a radically different way. And I can tell you that we spent, you know, 9 months calling up every major and minor publisher on the planet and told them, you know, hey, this is what we want to do. And then they said, wait a minute, what's the blockchain? Oh, hold on, what are you talking about? And then so we had to start all the way from ground one. So creating an entirely new business model that gets them to think in a different way is a very, very slow process. To William's point, he's absolutely right, because you know, we may live in a high-tech society whereby, you know, we're pushing the envelope, we use these buzzwords, you know, Bitcoin and blockchain and Ethereum, and we're doing all this stuff. But from an economically and commercially viable business, when people are putting 10, 20, 30, or $100 million up to make a movie or a game, don't you dare come to me and give me anything that's going to risk my business model. Because,
Right.
you know, that's just a no-no. So it's been hard, but I think that, you know, you see every day somebody else announces a blockchain this, a blockchain that, whether it's American Express, MasterCard, you know, Google, Amazon, everybody's doing it, right? So I think, you know, it's just starting to permeate society, but I think using things like smart contracts that didn't exist for us a year ago. I mean, coming from licensing again, imagine selling Call of Duty to 1 million of your closest friends in a traditional method of a piece of paper, the way Will and I used to do it. You would have to have a sub-license agreement for 1 million people, and it would stack, you know, as big as this room. You have
It's a lawyer full employment act, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you just couldn't physically. It was physically impossible to facilitate and administrate that. So when you talk about blockchain and smart contracts and assignment of rights, this takes time. It's just going to happen. It just takes a little while for it to happen.
Well, this is interesting to me because the notion of marketing with smart contracts that govern, with the opportunity to sell on, or to not even necessarily give up rights, but to control, it means to harness your superfans. We are in the ground zero of the greatest collection of superfans in the history of the universe, right? This place right here. And don't let them tell you anything other than that. But how do you harness that so that they can market your stuff? Well, all those companies that are out there right now, with their experiences and their takeovers of buildings and their booths down below, quote-unquote booths, et cetera, are all trying to market to their fans. But what if you take your super fans and they can push out the stuff and maybe even get a piece of it, right? Part of what you're talking about is not just, I have it and I can keep it, I can resell it, but I can also be an affiliate for my creator and champion it and sell it on. Not just keep mine but sell copies to them, and that can be managed too, right?
Sure.
Sure, that's possible.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, you know, whether it's the ability to have influencers and streamers or groups of people that want to, you know, become a part of the ecosystem, you know, there's a lot of people that have a lot of followers, a lot of, you know, influential people that say, hey, I'm playing this or I'm doing this, and giving them a voice in this digital marketplace to be able to bring their fans along and be able to resell product or go buy product or things that I like, and then letting them.
But again, those online influencers have become a giant business. Think about how you harness the online influencers in whatever corner you're in, whether it's games or film or online video or books, remember those? And use them to help push your stuff out. I think there's a really interesting opportunity here. And Tony, I'm sure you could see some of these creators building a world in DECENTRALAND. I'm going to have to work on that title with you guys, but to help create. So how would they use it for beyond just having a place to go that's better than Second Life, it's Fifth Life, or something like that, or Ninth Life?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most, I was in online video in the first startup that I worked on, and there weren't very many ways to monetize as a creator. And now I think blockchain is one of many technologies that's giving people with an audience and ways to like make a living doing what they love. So an open platform allows them to create any kind of arbitrary business that they want, whether it's a game that they create for themselves, or they can have events online, you name it, they could do it. So I think we're starting, one of the reasons that we've accepted being treated so poorly as users of the internet, as gamers, is because the discovery of content was so centralized. Like a few big players had all of this stuff. And I think as we start to distribute the pieces of the things that we use online, we're going to start to be able to construct much more interesting ways to interact with, have influencers interact with fans, publishers interact with gamers, users interact with each other. And like some of the things that you mentioned earlier are examples of that.
What's interesting about this, so just to be the devil's advocate, apparently that's my job, is that our dream when the internet came up, lo these many years ago, was that it would all be decentralized. The man wouldn't control it, that anybody could create their thing and get seen by anybody that could find it, really. But what we found out is that Google became a choke point, that Facebook became so big because of network effects that it became a choke point for information, and everything had to go through there. Such a big chunk of it, and that's why they made a lot of money. What stops the big boys, as we talk about decentralization in the gaming business and beyond, what stops the big boys, now we've got Twitch and Amazon, from taking over and controlling this?
Well, capitalism loves centralized activities. And capitalism and humanity like centralized activities because it's the best way to organize work.
However, this is a panel about decentralization, so come on, help me here, brother.
I didn't name the panel. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. There's this myth that blockchain is decentralized. It's not decentralized. It's
differently centralized.
Yeah, there's a myth about it, and you can read it, but it's not decentralized.
So I would disagree in some cases.
Yeah, there's some very, very, very small cases, but I mean, if you want to create scale and reliability, would you rather rely on thousands of individuals across the world doing an activity, producing something and giving it to you, or would you rather have it done by organized groups? Generally, most people would like organized groups because they're more accountable. There are a few things, however, that are best done decentralized. We don't have to go into them here, but there are a few things. And for those, the blockchain is a terrific. In fact,
is a good one example.
Well, if you want to make sure that you own something and you don't want ever one person to be able to tell you you don't own it, right? If there's ever one person who controls something that you own, and that person can be told or influenced or decide not to give it to you, I'd say that's a bad thing. Your money. Something near and dear to all of us. There's this sense that you own your money, but I don't believe you own your money. First of all, the government that printed it says it belongs to the government and you're licensed to use it.
Yeah, it's legal tender of the United States of America.
Yeah, you don't own that. They're letting you borrow it. And then they allow you to keep it in a bank. The bank thinks of it as its money that you kind of own. Try to get your money out of a bank if they don't feel too good about you. They pretty much won't ever let that happen. So Most of the people who originally got involved with Bitcoin and blockchain-based businesses, you know why? They were in countries where banks could not be relied upon, or where the country would devalue the currency
The
of
government
the
couldn't be
systems.
relied upon, either
And
one.
the government couldn't be relied upon. And it is such a powerful thing to be able to store your money in this internet, and no one can ever get it. The sun will run out of its energy before that code that you control and own can be cracked. That is pretty darn powerful. That was the original reason people wanted to own Bitcoin, because they could transfer it to anyone they wanted without permission. And most of us don't think about it every day, but everything you do, you need someone's permission. You needed someone's permission to walk through the gate to come here. Everything you do, you need someone's permission. The word we talk about in crypto and blockchain is permissionless. It's a crazy thing. You ask no one's permission to set up a blockchain bank account. You ask no one's permission to trade the money you have, this digital money, to somebody else. Every other thing you do when it comes to money, you have to ask someone's permission. The bank asks you, why are you doing this wire? If it's over 10,000, the government asks you, why do you need to do it? It's a crazy thing. So it turns out there's a lot of people in the world who don't like anybody asking them why they're doing something. And for those people, and there's a lot of video gamers in that category, they're like, well, I bought this from you, I'd like to keep it, I'd like to do what I want with it, so stop asking me the questions. And if we ever get to a point where we can make a perfectly decentralized world, I'd like it, but just remember, it's very, very hard for even the blockchain to operate in a decentralized way.
Okay, so Tony, you have a slightly different view.
Yeah, I think Lynn just gave a really good argument for why decentralization is great for money, right? But I think one of your points, Lynn, which I see a lot of valid arguments in, is that for a lot of systems, decentralization is way less efficient than centralization. So there are a lot of reasons we might, like the world that I envision is, users have lots of options. They have lots of rights. They're free from any kind of authoritarian requests from governments or companies or powerful people. It's going to take a while for everything we touch to have that level of like prioritizing the user, like giving the user control. And different things will have different levels of need for that. Like money is maybe the biggest need for that. Like my roommate was Venezuelan in college. We saw firsthand how bad hyperinflation is. Most of my team is in Argentina. They've lived with 10 to 20% depreciation of their currency every year. Like that is just a fact of life. That's crazy. And maybe digital goods is the next most important thing. If we start to really care about the spaces that we inhabit online, it makes no sense that somebody can nerf something you spent $10,000 on, for example, or spend thousands and thousands of hours earning. Other things like maybe social media. Some people might care about that. Other people might not care that it's on a database. And so when we talk about we talked a little bit about marketing, like user adoption. How do we get people to care? How do we get incumbents to get on board? I really think it's about education and options. So people don't know that there's a possible world where they can own their stuff, have property rights, have more rights in general, either online or offline. That's an education thing, and that's snowballing. People are getting more aware of it. Next year, maybe this room will be as full as the Wonder Woman room. And then
it won't be as cute, I have to say. She was really adorable.
And then
it was like, I gotta follow her. I mean, really? So,
yeah, that's how I felt.
It was so unfair. I'm gonna talk to Conrad about that.
And then on the option side, we can build completely separate systems now for the first time. Like Decentraland doesn't need an app store to work. It's just on the web. And we can have all these amazing things on top of it. Money's built right in because of like cryptocurrency and all that kind of stuff. And then we need to reduce the inefficiencies that the technology brings. And over time, like right now, it kind of sucks, these blockchains, because they're slow and expensive, and like some of them say they're decentralized, but they're not. I think as an industry, like we need to work on making it less painful for just the average gamer to use those technologies and get all the benefits that they might not even know they want.
So Lee, what's your perspective? Is this decentralizing, centralizing? Where are we going?
Well, I'd say that we're in a little bit of a different position than William and Tony, in that we have companies that spend $100 million on a game, to William's point earlier, they're not going to give any complete decentralized control over that game anytime soon, at least not in my lifetime, by the way. And I think that as long as, you know, you have content creators that spend a lot of money, you know, greed is a fundamental element of what we all do in the entertainment business. I'm not at that point where we can, Wax can have people create content, which is great, and I can say, you transfer it and I own it, because that's something that I created and somebody created, and that's great. You know, the minute you put a Warner Brothers or an EA in the middle of that, you guys know how difficult that conversation can be. So yes, you know, right? So I think that, you know, while we're making this baby steps to educating, you know, publishers and content creators about blockchain and rights management and, you know, a trusted, immutable blockchain in and of itself, to William's point, I still think from rights content creators, we have a ways really to go before you start to say, Activision's going to create a Call of Duty, put it completely decentralized on the blockchain and say, hey, by the way, if you guys don't like it, just send me some Ethereum. Have a nice day.
Right.
I think we're in my world, we're a long ways away, but we're making baby steps, I would like to say, right? To get them to go from, they're not going to go from A to Z, but maybe we get them from, A to B and A to Z.
I'm thinking more of the opportunity is that the guy who makes the next wonderful little, iOS mobile game, that the next Cuphead that comes along, that kind of thing. It's a really cool game and has a really great mechanic and all that does well, but isn't controlled by EA or Warner Bros.
And just add this point that there's no matter how good you can audit something, or else used to be an auditor, you can never know for certain if you tell somebody, hey, I've got a beautiful piece of artwork, you can put it in the game. You never know for certain how many times they sold that game. And they absolutely lie to you. They lie to you. In fact, they always lie to you. You always have to go and audit them and find where they make mistakes.
This is like that classic book title. What was it? The producer said, Hello, He Lied, I think was the name of the book.
And you know what the worst part is?
Hollywood.
It's the biggest companies who lie the most. That's been my experience. So here's something really cool that we do at Wax. When an artist comes to us, and many do, and say, I would like to have my art used in this virtual item or this game, we say, okay, and here's the deal, okay, you're going to get paid X% every time it's sold. We don't control the ledger that shows how many copies of that are sold. That's on, let's say, for right now, Ethereum. So you can go to a blockchain and you can see literally every single thing that's controlled. We call that transparency. It seems really kind of like simple, but it's incredibly powerful to people who create art. It's incredibly powerful to people who create anything. If they're going to license that to another group, they'd like to know if they're going to get paid a certain amount per copy, that certain amount is actually the amount that the company reported. And those are the sorts of things that blockchain, like I said, it seems mundane, but it's really powerful. It's pure accountability. Anything that goes on in the blockchain, anybody can see. That's one of the cool aspects of it. Anyone is allowed to see exactly every single transaction. Think of it like Venmo, but for everything. And when you can do that, you never have to rely on trusting whether someone is telling you the right number. You just look on the blockchain, and whatever the blockchain says, that's the number. For people who are part of the entertainment industry, we all have heard of the movie accounting, studio accounting, which is
versus art book.
yeah, 5 for me, 1 for you, and then I take the one back when they're not looking. That's studio accounting. It's impossible to do that kind of accounting with the blockchain. Everybody sees everything. And I'll tell you, for people who contribute to video games, they're going to like it. They're going to like seeing everything up on the blockchain. It's sort of like, call it the supply chain aspect of the video game production.
Sure, so we'll see this probably start small and with the smaller operators, because they're doing Kickstarters and equity crowdfunding and that kind of stuff, and this is a way to tokenize some of that and do some things. One question, and we've got 4 minutes. Real quickly, how far away is this from reality for Wax?
So we're the largest application on the blockchain today, Wax is. And it's not far away, it's here. It works wonderful. The trust part of it is great. Anytime we do a transaction, everybody can see it. People get to own the virtual items and trade them. So it's already here. Getting all of the blockchains out there to all work really well, because there's many blockchains, not just one, maybe we're 5 to 7 years away.
Tony, where are you guys? How far along?
Yeah, so the blockchain layer is done and in the hands of users. Like I mentioned, we did our auction last year, so we have a community of folks that are already building on it.
How many?
People that own it.
Yeah, how many folks are in? So you
So-
said $20 million worth of that's active folks.
So there are 70,000 total parcels of land, and I think some number around 10,000 people own them.
Okay, good.
And the end user experience, like being able to launch the site or an app, is likely going to come at the end of the year. We're just opening up a closed alpha at the end of this month, so
Okay.
trying to iron that out.
So you're almost there. And Lee?
Yeah, we're launching later this year, which is going to be at Gamescom for those of you guys who are gamers and go to Cologne or follow the news there. We're going to be announcing early access at Gamescom, and for those I think that are coming in the first 90 days, they'll be part of our founding members club, founders club, if you will. They're going to get a lot of benefits and rewards along with joining up. So that will be live later. I'd say probably that show is the week of the 19th, 20th of August. So we'll be announcing a lot more stuff at the show then, but certainly we'll be live this fall with a lot of titles. We've made a lot of announcements already on a ton of publishing partners and games, and so we'll just keep, trekking on until we launch.
All right, great. I think we'll wrap this up 2 minutes early and let you go. You have a question? It better be a real question. Get up here.
Question for Lee.
On the mic, please. But better be a question, not a policy statement.
Oh, no. No politics. A lot of these big companies, they prevent reselling, and I see it not as just greed, but maybe fear of piracy. How would RoboCash address this?
So as I said earlier, one of the biggest things we had a challenge with is getting to understand the blockchain to begin with, and the idea that what they didn't want to have happen is they didn't want to race to the bottom. They didn't want some people to buy a digital game for $39.99 and then a week later flip it for $29.99 and then I'm out money. That's not going to happen. So what we had to do was engineer an entirely new business policy, which is if you sell it a week or 2 weeks later, it's still $29.99 or $39.99. I'm sorry. But you get back 25% of the money. They then get the same 70% they get with other channels. So they get 95% on a new sale, but 25% on a resale goes back to the gamer. So that way, you can make a bazillion copies of the game because it doesn't ever degrade, right? But they're basically giving back to the gamer and doing no worse than they already would do had they done with other digital publishing, portals. So yeah, there's greed. They don't mind reselling as long as they're still getting their cut. In this case, they're just sharing money back with the gamer. And frankly, I think they're pretty happy that, they're sort of being perceived as better stewards of their fans because now they're sharing some of that money back with the gamer.
Right, they're seen as less greedy, and that's an optical benefit.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Thank you.
all right, so that's our panel. Give them a big hand, everybody.